Welcome to the show today. I'm Douglas Gabriel, and my guest is Joe Visconti. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you for having me again, Doug. This is fun.
Long as you keep asking good questions, I just love the conversations that ensue afterwards. You know what Goethe said? He said that what is greater than gold? Light. What is greater than light? Conversation. So we're going to keep on conversing because you come
Yeah,
up with so many good topics.
the you're a wealth of knowledge, and sometimes I feel that too in my own world. Are surrounded by some people that can't really ask us the questions we need asked.
That's the truth. You know, Rudolf Steiner was saddened by a few things. One of the things was that people didn't ask him enough good questions because he wanted to tell much more. But there's, according to him, an esoteric law that you can only ask a question, answer a question that's been asked of a spiritual teacher. And of course, he was one. So when you ask a question, the spiritual teacher is usually quite happy. It's like the spiritual world. When you come up with something that they like to eat, some good morality, some good imagination, moral imagination, moral inspiration, moral intuition. Oh man, they get so excited. They come down because Rudolf Steiner says that literally, when you have a good thought, the angels come and chew on you, and the archangels come when you can really put it into words, and when you can put it into deeds, then the archai come and they actually embody you for that oftentimes only a nanosecond, that we do something really great. But that's the beauty. And that's what we're going to talk about today, beauty. Because last time you brought up this amazing question, which I don't know why. I don't think we've ever addressed this question. As you grow more immoral, do you grow more ugly? And is your truth written on your face? And is your beauty really there for everyone to see because it's now explicated and shown to the whole world because of this new age that we're in, because we're across the threshold, whether we like it or not? So that was a great question. So why don't you start on that? Because I have a lot to say about it.
Okay, yeah, it popped in my head, as you know these things do, when you have a lot of information on any subject, actually, not even anthroposophy, and you have troubleshooting skills. I guess that's what it would be. And I had remembered that for our time and for people that are listening, and maybe the majority of your listeners out there kind of know this or are tuned to it, but these questions really have to do what I thought would be the general public and how they could be interested in this, which Rudolf Steiner explains, and it has to do with the with beauty, with the our external features, not necessarily materialistic. That's something that we could worship, but just our form, that which is Maya, but that which is real to the news media, entertainment world, Hollywood, Nashville. Everybody's into cosmopolitan magazines, everything to do with colorizing and photoshopping and the Kardashians and trying to find beauty and what they think beauty is. And we'll talk about what real beauty is, but what I want to ask you and kind of have you elaborate on is how what Rudolf Steiner speaks about in our future incarnations as we ask these questions and study the Christ language of anthroposophy. What does it do to us in our next life beyond what it does to us now? Is there something that occurs to us then? And he touches upon our features and how we will become a new race of people, and the others that are in the world with us at that time will know we are not the same as them. And not that we'll be superior. I don't want to paint things he didn't say, but we'll be a different race of people. And almost like what we saw happen in the third epic of Egypt, when people had, unless the Egyptians were crazy, they had all types of appendages and animalistic features. We can almost see that on people today. If you look at people that are angry or whatever, there's the American Indians talk about that, the wolf and the snake and all these things that come out. But on the subject of our future incarnation and how anthroposophical truths in this life consciously sought for can actually make a physical change in a future incarnation. Go ahead. I think we got some unmuting going on here.
Oh, sorry. I was getting warmed up to blowing up my head. So my head is real. The animals are. Steiner says that everybody has all the animals. That's why we have a zodiacal circle, a circle of animals in the sky. And when you look up there, a lot of those are animals. Why are they animals? Because in your head is every animal there is. You look at the nose and you look at this and that. What are those? Those are all the perfected elements of every animal turned into a beautiful sphere that reflects the starry sky. But this animal, and especially if you take just the ecliptic of the animals that we know in the 12 signs of the zodiac, if you take those animals and you merge them all together, you have 12 animals working together, and you have the objective one in the middle that can say, I'm not any one of those animals. I am a human being. Unfortunately, in our time, he pointed out that because of people's will action, as we mentioned last time, what you do with your metabolic system, your arms and your fingers and your hands and also your jaw and your tongue, but your legs and your feet and your metabolic system, that becomes your head in your next incarnation. So when you're looking at the head, you're looking at the past of the person. When you're looking at their heart and the rhythmic system, the breathing and the heart and the lungs, the rhythmic system, the what do they call it? The cardiopulmonary system. What is that? That is a dreaming part of yourself that is in the present. You're awake, but you're not really awake. But you are quite awake in the head. And so you're really kind of dreaming, but this is the present. And then when you go into your will, that's the dragon. That is the forces of the metabolic system that no one can understand. That is the willpower of the human being, where fire comes out of there. That's the fire in the belly they're talking about. That's what's called the tumo, or what the Tibetans call the fierce woman. And if you want to talk about fire now, that's real fire, a fierce woman. And there's all these exercises. If you can't do that stuff, you're not going to do the higher exercises. So if you haven't been able to tame the fire of the animal with your thinking, because you are all those animals, unfortunately, you may still be caught in one of them. And so in that next incarnation, if you were a wolf of a warrior, a marauding Hun who spent their entire life killing, then in this incarnation, if it was your next incarnation, you might resemble a wolf. And as a clairvoyant, born as a clairvoyant, I had to deal with that all the time. When I would see people, I wouldn't just see their physical body, I'd see their etheric body, their astral body, and their higher bodies. And Rudolf Steiner, I was just reading yesterday, said that a clairvoyant, a psychic, as they call them these days, can look at a person and see the brain sand in the pineal gland. And it's either glowing crystals or a certain type of carbonated calcium or calcium carbonate in the pineal gland, or it's a calcite, or it's a phosphorus type of calcite. But as you look at those, they're different colors. And the pure clear one makes a rainbow shoot across your midbrain to your pituitary gland. So when I helped write the third treatment, and I love the way you put it exactly because you're a movie writer and you do all that stuff, I just helped write the third treatment, which was the real movie. But the point is that I said the kyber crystal. What is the kyber crystal? It's the calcium carbonate crystal in your pineal gland that protects your entire aura and makes you beautiful and gives you the crown of the saint if you are a saint, and gives you the horns of a devil if you're a devil. So you could have the red kyber crystal or dark kyber crystal and go the dark way. That's why inside of each lightsaber was a kyber crystal that had to be tuned to the crystal in the head of the Jedi warrior. This is what was supposed to come across in the movie. I don't know if anybody got this, but this is what the original idea was. And so only a master could teach another person not only to find the right kyber crystal that is in the same morphic resonance as yours in your head, but first off, to develop one in your head. By the way, it's called biomineralization, and your IQ is directly related to the amount of those crystals in your pineal gland. And it comes through in your physiognomy as whether you're a human, or you're going backwards and you're an animal, or you're going forwards and you're an angel and you're pretty. And it doesn't matter what you look like. You have a beautiful aura, right? And everybody experiences that. So in today's age, whether they like it or not, the old Greek philosophy was three things: truth, beauty, and goodness. In today's age, truth has become falsehood. Beauty has become as C.S. Lewis said, a discarded image. The Beatrice no longer leads us. Beauty no longer leads us. It is the abnegation of truth, the abnegation of beauty, and the abnegation of goodness. And so that's what's happened in our age, because we're across the threshold. Everything's upside down, inside out, and backwards. People think that ugly is beautiful, and that falsehood, if it is gain for them, is truth. And that goodness, well, goodness is what I want, no matter what I want, no matter how sick and disgusting it is, like you've been harping on the 56 million murdered children that Margaret Sanger and Bill Gates Sr. have murdered so far. And that's ugly. But to other people, they think that's beautiful and good, and that's truthful. We're in a mixed up age, Joe.
Yeah. Now let's go to the future life and how the, I'll call them secrets, but the occult, the hidden knowledge, which is available in our time to see, as Rudolf Steiner said, is an open secret right in front of us. How that, with our intentions and our interest searching for it, whether we ever get it, and there's no, you get 100 and a star on your test here, you're seeking it, how that activity, no matter how, again, I'll repeat this because the perfection of we must have it all exactly in a form, Mr. A and Mr. Armin's education system, and we got 100, and there is no 100 in the test that we're dealing with, but it's all in the attempt of the human being. What occurs after we cross the threshold, and sometimes how he speaks about a second or third life with karma, as well as this spiritual knowledge.
Well, those are huge questions. And as we think about it, first off, I think one thing to remember is when you go across a threshold after death, what are you going to see? You're going to see what the Tibetan Buddhists and the ancient Egyptians described as these big monsters, and they're going to come after you in the bardo, and these fearsome creatures with multiple heads and many arms and fiery weapons and riding on strange animals and coming after you. Who is that? That's you.
That's you.
You created that.
Yeah.
And what do they all say? Embrace it, love it, it's you, you'll get through it. That's what happens when you die. You're going to see all these horrible things coming at you, right? And so right now, we're all across the threshold of death. We always used to say that the atomic bomb could drop any second, so we have to be ready that this is the last second that we're going to be alive, right? We're beyond that now. We're already in the realm of the dead. So the dead are speaking to us and inspiring people with evil demonic things, and the angels are speaking to us. So what are you going to do?
And you can see that in the Walking Dead TV shows. I mean, it's all being broadcast right through your arts and entertainment because the artists and the writers are picking these things up. They're showing you this.
And we've talked before about the age of falsehood politics, or the age of post-truth, or the age of doctors who run hospitals not for health but for illness, or the Center for Disease Control, and they never put the P there, prevention. Not a single speck of prevention ever happens from our highest medical institutions. They are all centered on illness and on commercialism. And so you can see that goodness has now been supplanted with what is good for me. And unfortunately, it's antinomianism. It's a Frankism. It's Sabbateanism. It's plain and clear that people say, I'm a materialist. When I die, I go to a cold, dark grave. That's it. So while I'm here, I'm going to grab everything I can for me. It's all about me, 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 me. Because why? I'm a materialist. I'm scared of death. I don't believe I'm immortal. I don't believe in life after death. And therefore, I have to do this. So what is true, good, beautiful, and good for me may be evil to you, but who cares? Because, what do I care about karma or reincarnation? It doesn't exist. And this is what secular humanism, this is what superstition science has brought us to, that they tell us that what they say is true, but they change what they say all the time. So what's truth? There's no truth right now. Truth has been completely abnegated, but beauty, let's talk about that. Why is it that a human would want to, out there, change their body so that it would have horns? I've seen people with the horns, and removing their front of their nose and cutting off their ears and cutting off their this and that, so that they look truly like a demon, like an animal, and they're extraordinarily proud of it. What is that about?
What are they seeing inside their imagination? What are they tuning to? And again, going back to beauty and anthroposophy, um, and this is so important because we're living in this glamour. What they've done is they've glamorized evil, um, in the sphere in the time of rights. This is how far they've gone. So we have rights to do this and we have rights to do that. Everyone has a right, unless you're a white Christian male, straight male, then you don't have any rights. Or if you're a black child in the womb to be born, you don't have any rights. The genocide that's occurring there. And how have they done this in the time, in the absence of our churches, in the absence of spiritual truths? Even politically, we have to realize that the problems we're suffering under will not be solved politically. It's a moral solution. It's a spiritual solution that has to occur. All the programs in the world, all the money in the world already haven't solved it. And because we are across the threshold, and Doug, take a second to talk about what it means that we, collective humanity, has crossed the threshold for those who may not understand that in detail.
Yes, that's something that's very critical, because if you don't see it in a giant perspective, then it doesn't make much sense. But in the far past, let's say 2000, 2000 BC, everyone had natural clairvoyance. When they looked at nature, they saw what was behind nature. And it wasn't because they had developed what we need to develop at our age, new organs of sense perceptions, so that we can actually perceive the supersensible world. They perceived it in a completely natural way through their own body. So they knew that it was true. And so when you talked about these things to a Greek or an ancient person in India or an ancient Persian, they, when they talked about the gods, when they talked about Angry Manu or they talked about Ahura Mazda, they were very real and they were inside of them. They were outside, but they knew they were also inside. So they had a connection. So the bridge was connected. And the word relinkio means to relink, to where you came from. Where are you relinking to? If you don't have a cosmology that says where you came from and one that says where you're going, you're in a pretty bad place right now, because we are definitely stuck in a muddy swamp, and people are even losing the ability to be human anymore. They are actually devolving into insect type people, or people who just use the third part of their brain, the reptilian, what's called the reptilian or the mammalian or the human. They use only the reptilian part of their brain, which is all about fight or flight. Am I going to conquer the other? This is all about conquering, right? And so as you approach the threshold, if you don't understand that you must develop a new set of organs that are based upon your moral development through moral actions, not moral just sitting around theoretically, but you must have moral thinking, moral feeling, moral willing. And if you have that and you cross the threshold, you're not going to be scared by any monsters. You're going to see angels coming to you and all your friends and relatives and all the people that you loved. Why? Because everything you give out in this life is what you get back after you die. Now, that happens in your sleep too, just that most people don't realize it. You're digesting what you have given out, because really we are conduits for love. And there is no limit to the amount of love that one person can give out. I met Mother Teresa, and that was proof to me of how much love can come through one single individual. Very strange story I'll tell you sometime about when I did meet her. But anyway, the point is that if you're going to meet the threshold and you haven't fought that dragon, if you haven't conquered those animals in you, then you will have to then. And you really won't be able to experience much in the spiritual world, even though right now the veil has been opened and we can look right into the spiritual world for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And it's not just a seeing, of course, or just a hearing. And so when we have these things, when you approach the threshold and you're pushed back and you see ugliness, and then people become the ugly and think the ugly is beautiful, that's called worshiping the dark. And whatever you do on a regular basis is your religion. Whatever you think is your God. because you are the image of God. And so now we've lost the discarded image. The discarded image, the image of God. It's supposed to be the image of God. You're not supposed to tattoo your body. You're not supposed to put holes in it and pierce it and deform it and cut this and that and have every type of Botox and every type of adjustment. There was one Hollywood star who said, literally, there's no part of my body that I haven't had plastic surgery on. And I'm thinking, wow, that's amazing. And that same artist, who is really a con artist, because all actors really, what are they? They're cons. They're good cons. And if it's for catharsis, that's one thing. But if it's for money and fame and Luciferism, well, that's to be prideful. It's a wholly different thing.
Yeah, and it was part of storytelling. So in my training at New York, and what I love about the acting part, when it's done purely to convey through catharsis, through uh, it's an old thing. When the gods no longer appeared, even in the church at the altar, that's when the priests came in. That's when the choirs of angels turned into the choir. And so the actor stands as the true ego who pretends all the time. Think about that. In every life we are, the ego is completely pretending this existence under this personality with these features. And we have built this up through external materialism as well as our conceptions. But Rudolf Steiner speaks about this threshold experience that humanity is going through. The veil has been lifted for all of us. And you could be initiated through nature versus the initiation process. It could just happen. You can't earn it through merit. So even your initiation processes, you can't do that if the soul is not prepared and ripe and ready. But humanity individuals can be just by life experiences. And what's occurring is all of us have begun to cross the threshold. And why Rudolf Steiner brings anthroposophy, I stated this in the last program, was that if mankind does not have the knowledge of what's happening, they will be locking people up in mental institutions, drugging people. And so when you see this collective overdose on humanity drinking alcohol, I love a glass of wine too, don't get me wrong, but I mean abusing it, with the drugs legal and illegal, with sexual deviancy, in fetishes, in every anomaly that you can see in the human form. It's now those have become a right. And so he brought this in so that we would not be drugged and fall into fetishes, because spiritual beings come upon us when we fall into those different aberrations of the human ego and chain us to matter. But he brings this in so that we recognize that we're all going to have, and everybody is. I was talking to a friend this morning for coffee, again, another one of my friends, and we talked about that voice you hear inside that said, go here. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's very quiet, and only speaks once. This conscience that's coming out with the spiritual world helping us all day long, and the most minute small things we do. This doesn't have to be, way up there in the angels and the saints. It's happening in our everyday simplicity, but we're crossing it. And so people are exposed at this point to either trying to discover what it is without the religions, because they're gone, without science, which it's gone, and we're all on our own individually. What Rudolf Steiner gives through anthroposophy is those channel markers I mentioned before, to show us the different ways. You don't have to stay at this degree, longitude or latitude, but where the rocks are, and where the mainland is, where the deep ocean, and where the winds are. And he gives us so much that he gathers from everywhere. This is other people don't realize. Rudolf Steiner will quote, and all of his works and books, you'll see him relating to other historical figures. So he does much more than just give data out that you could find aberrated in the secret doctrine, but he gives it out in a way that was intelligible for people. But we are crossing this threshold. And so I'd like to go to the next level of this crossing the threshold, because we're alive, but we're crossing it, not through death. Why, again, how we will look like different races of people. And if we don't pick up anthroposophy and we go into dark materialism, what kind of features are we going to have in the next life, or the next 2 to 3 lives?
Oh my, oh my, oh my, Joe. Okay, well, first off, Steiner pointed out, because he's not a racist, and when he refers to races, he's talking about things that are so ancient that they're not even acknowledged as races. Okay, I mean, the 7 races coming off of Atlantis are not the races that are discussed by historians, archaeologists, or anybody else, anthropologists. So What he's talking about is that in America, we have a melting pool where all races should merge until we all have what he calls bronze colored skin. He's not saying he's not a white supremacist. He's not a racist. He's absolutely saying we need to mix it all because that's the beauty of humanity. And that, like all the animals that had to descend to the earth and all the insects and all the bugs and all the critters before we came down, because they were perfecting those qualities. The races were perfecting qualities. Now, at this point, it is a merging of all races that will be the new race. As a matter of fact, that's also true even with archangels, that certain archangels no longer watch over the Celtic race. They became the guardian of esoteric Christianity. And in terms of America, America doesn't have one archangel. It is a group of archangels. And right now, because we are leading, it is the archai, Michael, who is leading us. Now, the question of who you are in beauty is about what are you supposed to become? What are you aiming for? Do you really want to be like your idols in Hollywood, the stars that we put into the sky? Those are the sickest, most depraved people on the face of the earth, next to, of course, bankers, brokers, and politicians. But yeah, sorry, but they are. And we all know it. And if you don't know it, then you haven't been paying any attention. And yes, the true act of, or the art of acting, was Dionysian. And in the front row in the first seat was Dionysus. He showed up, a god, of course, Dionysus the Younger, showed up to watch Sophocles put on a play. Aeschylus, they watched the Greek playwrights. And basically, it was like this: if you get it wrong, I'm here to punish you. So you better put them through the exact catharsis they need for evolution, not de evolution. And so, what do you see? You see plays like Antigone, where the Furies become the human conscience. You actually have in the play a transformation of the Greek beings, these three women who are like harpies who chase you when you do something wrong. What's that? Thinking, feeling, and willing. When you do something wrong, you're chasing, feeling, and willing. Your conscience follows you. When you internalize it, after you're no longer a Greek, but you're a modern person with clear thinking, that's your conscience. And as you pointed, it's sometimes a loud voice, sometimes it's the small, still voice. Most people, they don't have a conscience. Materialists, many of them don't have a conscience. And unfortunately, now we'll get into the dark stuff, many of them do not have spirits. And some of them don't even have a soul. And many of them are working only out of the hindbrain, the reptilian brain, or working on fallen aspects of what human thinking is through Lucifer, which is basically becoming an insect. So we have the choice to become anything that we want. And as I said earlier, your religion is what you do, whatever you do every day. So if I get up and I pray, like the Tibetan Buddhists do, to Vajrayogini, and I do the 11 yogas of Vajrayogini, and I become her in all aspects of my thinking, my hearing, my eating, my every aspect of me is that deity. And that deity is the one that gives love to every other Buddha. All 10,000 Buddhas get their love from Vajrayogini. Well, if I think about that all the time and everything I do is to become that deity, that's what I become. Now, what are you doing? I ask you, people in the audience. Who is it you emulate? Who's your idol? Who's your star? Are you your own star and you're never going to get to heaven, up into the sky, to be immortal, to be shown by the stars in the sky, the deeds, the good deeds that you've done? It's just all an analogy, of course, but this is what the ancients lived for. They lived for this. They lived for the concept that Joe and I would do something so great that eventually we'd be put up in the sky showing the great deeds of me conquering a serpent and you conquering a great bull. It's like, okay, what did they really do? Well, I fought evil and Joe led the people. See? So when you look up and you see the stars, it's a whole other thing. Well, that's what happens with the threshold. At the threshold, all your humanity, basically your lower humanity, and all your sense perceptions and anything you ever had as a sense perception can't get across. So imagine if you are a what is now a secular transhumanist believer in superstition science, and you don't believe in life after death, and you get to the threshold, you are going to be thrown back so hard that it could make you crazy. And Rudolf Steiner said, in our age, being neurotic, psychotic, and going into aberrations of sex and violence will be the response to the threshold. When instead of meeting the threshold and getting over the dragon in yourself, you actually go across the threshold and communicate with your own guardian angel. And when you do that, you start a communion that then feeds you spiritual food. And then you're not going to worry so much about the things in the world because you understand the big picture if you have a cosmology. So when you get to the threshold, as all of humanity is at this time, simply because that's part of human evolution, we don't get to be complacent anymore. If you're doing nothing and you've retreated into your contentment, then you're going backwards. And so you have to move forward. The being of wisdom only salutes those who grab the banner and lunge forward in the battle, because this is a battle. This isn't some theoretical thing. Philosophy is dead. Science is dead. Medicine is dead. Politics is dead. The Western civilization is dead. If you don't understand that the fight is in the etheric and it's not climate change, it's etheric change, and that etheric change is happening in you, then you're missing the boat, because you yourself can go into heaven and paradise. New Jerusalem is descending right now for those who prepared themselves as the bride to marry the bridegroom. And this is in all the teachings. I'm using Christian analogies here, Christian images. I could go into any religion, practically you name, and give you the same exact content, but with a little bit different images. For instance, in Persian, it's Ahura Mazda. It was Christ. He's come to the earth. He was in the rays of the sun. He's fighting darkness, Angri Manu. That's where I got the concepts for light and dark. It's a Persian adult fairy tale. That's what Star Wars is. And I wrote it that way so that it is the battle with Ahriman, who's called in Persia Angri Manu, because that's our future. Now, if you don't get into this battle and you just sit back and you do nothing, in your next incarnation, you're going to be less human and less human and less human until pretty soon you're one of those insect people. You are literally a locust person. You are a snail person, a slug person, and you're in the eighth sphere, the trash can of this incarnation. The angels, like Joe, they're going to be on a different sphere, but they're going to be flying down to help you. But how's Joe going to help you get out of the mud? You need to act now. You can only make spiritual advancements while you're incarnated in this realm, in this veil of tears.
Yeah.
Because why? It's evil, in case you didn't notice.
Yeah,
and good has to come up against evil. If there wasn't evil, there'd be no good. And so that is the scary part of the future. But for the good people, they're going to rise up into the clouds. As Christ said, he'll return in the clouds. He went up into the clouds. It's all about the clouds. The clouds are the etheric. And we've written a description of it called the bioarc of the North, in case you want to understand it. But basically, it's when your body becomes a sphere and your organs become chambers, resonating chambers that cause you levity to float up so that you can get the direct nourishment from the sun and from ultraviolet and gamma rays, which now kill us, but in the future will transform our DNA so that we can receive that nourishment. And we won't be the slug people. But I'm sorry, there will be slug people. Just yesterday, I'm reading in a number of places of Steiner where he says, he says to the priest, the Christian community priest, don't forget this. A huge portion of humanity will not advance. Yes. You better get serious.
We spoke about that in one of the previous shows I did with you. Let's go back to, I want to bring it back for all the people that may not be into anthroposophy that deep. With the actor or with the arts. Let's call it the arts, where Rudolf Steiner speaks about we prepare ourselves, and the artist and works of art are the organs for the gods to speak through us, through eurythmy, through things that are the arts. And again, the word art at our time means anything goes. So he's not addressing that. But when the human form and the word and the truth, and what you spoke about with Socrates, and when the art forms are conducive to the human being, and love, real love, not love, porno love. We're allowing the gods to come through us. Well, the same thing is occurring with our music and our arts that are depraved. Demons are coming in. And so the question then becomes, what is beauty? What is truth? And in the time of rights, and that's really the time we're in right now, which will pass in the future, we will be moving through and out of the time of rights. And so today, everything, just about everything has a right, except for, as I repeat myself, not to be a white supremacist here, but if you're, like Candace Owens says, if you're a white straight male, she said that on Tucker Carlson last night, you and a black child in the womb are the two most despised, put down groups that there are. And again, so how do you define beauty and truth in the time of rights? This is a really great subject, because this is where everyone is saying, and why they are not speaking out. Who could speak against the beast, the unseen beast in media, and the doxing and the deplatforming and the canceling that's occurring right now? Because, and as many of you may have watched, PayPal made a boo-boo a few days ago. PayPal put out in their new user agreement, which I received, that they'll take $2,500, up to $2,500 out of your PayPal account if you put out misinformation. So this is where they're going. So again, this goes back to truth. Well, what misinformation? And truth, beauty, goodness. Well, goodness, what does good mean? And I like to use the word helpfulness instead of goodness, because it kind of strips away the religious connotations of the word morality and good that nobody wants to hear, because they're immoral. No, I'm not immoral. No, I'm not bad. Unless it's a nice bad, street bad. I'm bad. Oh, that's bad. It's not bad. It's cool. So if you look at the language that's going on, and especially for the youth, it's at what point is something beautiful? It's at what point is something truthful? At what point is something helpful? So as you spoke about academia, religions, government, everything, these programs are created to be helpful. This vaccine or drug is created to be helpful rather than good or healing, because nothing heals anymore. The healthcare industry likes to use the word healthcare industry. They don't deliver health. There are companies, and right down the street here in Hartford, Connecticut, I live. They're all here, Travelers, and all of them, and they're here to what? To deliver actuarial information and billing for something that doctors and hospitals and pharmaceuticals supply through the doctor for you, but they claim that they are a healthcare industry. No, they're not. So again, words meaning in the time of rights is now a free-for-all. It's king of the hill. Whoever can do what they want. So getting back to the arts and why it's important, if God can't come to the religions anymore, and he can't come through the arts, and the hierarchies can't come through the arts, what's occurring when you don't want to pick up at least any religion, the seeking of understanding what truth is, what the human being is, because if you stay in that neutral zone, which you can't stay lukewarm, and you don't seek to try to find, no matter what's occurring to you in the vacancy of the hierarchies coming in, because you've shut the door and barricaded them from coming in your being. Education has done that to you. Everyone has put you in a box. You can't even speak. You can go to do sports. You can do your hobbies. You can get into drugs and sex and rock and roll or whatever it is in the time of rights, but you're not going to be looked upon if you're a goody two shoes, if you're looking for the spiritual realm. There's such a force against us seeking to even speak. And this is why in politics I use what I'll repeat myself here for new listeners. I've asked, in debates with the governor and running for governor or House of Representatives or U.S. Senate, to the candidates, do you have a soul? And did the soul come from somewhere? These are primal questions. In a time of rights, it's a great time to do these things. We can actually put questions like this, because if you have a soul and you come from somewhere, God, heaven, whatever your religion, when did God give you, especially for the incarnating child, when did God give you that destiny? The day you were born out of your mother's womb? At that point, you went home to the house you lives in, to the school you're going to attend, to the family there you're in. It's too late to have, for God had given you your karma or destiny or path of destiny with its choices the day you came out of the womb. If there you have a soul, Mr. Politician, and you come from some place and there is a destiny for your life that wasn't given out of the womb, it was given before you came into your mother, then what are you doing when you abort that child? What are you doing to destiny? What are you doing to Earth, future scientists, etc.? Why is this important? Because what's happening right now is the answer that's not spoken from them is, I don't have a soul. Forget a spirit. They don't even understand what that word means. Don't have a soul. I'm an animal. They're saying politically, and the world is saying right now, we are animals. They are saying that unspoken. And so when the hierarchies are here to work with us to help us develop to the higher stages to become angelic, the forces in our time under the guise of rights are saying, no, 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 you have a right to be anything you want. So look at how it's taken over. So no longer is there God, there's going to be government with its rules. They're going to choose that what school you go to, or give you the choice on a selective sheet of these are the schools and the education things you can become. And so they become God. They take over what was supposed to be destiny if you live outside the womb. So we're living in an unbelievable time. And again, going back to our beginning thought lines of what are we going to look like? What are we going to appear to others in future lives? It's already starting. We've crossed the threshold, and you can see on people's faces presently. If you look very closely, you can not just features. That's not the answer. If you look, you can see their habits, the way they attack, the way they explain, the way they express themselves under stress and pressure. It truly comes out almost like shape shifting. It's already occurring, but more and more, if we don't add the kingdom of heaven to us now while we're conscious in the time of rights, when the time of rights close and we move into duty, into something completely different in the sixth epic, which I want Doug to take off on this one, what's going to occur under that time of the sixth epic when this fifth epic into the year approximately 3500 AD, what's going to occur when we don't have the rights anymore?
Well, by then, we'll actually be able to see Sophia, the being of wisdom that all religions are chasing, and we'll have that communion with her. And we'll actually, in Russia, we will bring forth that which is the mood of the Grail that has been awaiting, and it will go into really a Philadelphian-like community. And then later, much later, it'll come back to America and finish up. But let's go back to what you pointed at something which is so true. It's called with the Norse. It's called unconditional hospitality. All the people believed that at any moment a knock on the door could be Odin coming to their house to visit as the Grey Wanderer, at a human-looking person. And so, no matter who came to their door or any disguise whatsoever, whoever came to their door, whoever they met, in every station of life, they treated with unconditional hospitality because it could be a god or a goddess. The Greeks also believed that the gods and goddesses came down and interacted with them. They had children. And if you were the lucky or unlucky one, you might have Zeus come visit you, and you'd have a son who would be a great hero, somewhere between a god and a human. And so this whole progression of human, what will they be? To a hero, to a god, to whatever, to an angel, to an archangel? Where do they go? What is it? The Greeks knew what they wanted to be. They wanted to be a hero like Hercules, which is really Heracles. I won't get into that, but she was a woman, not a man. Anyway, the point is, or like Psyche. I want to be like Psyche. I want to marry Eros and go into the stars. I want to have immortality. They all knew that. They all understood those images. We don't. Nowadays, we have nothing. We're devoid of any philosophy, any religion, anything. And everything has been abnegated. So what is it that we turn to? What you turn to is inside yourself. And if you do that, and you listen to what Steiner was telling the Christian community priests in these lectures I was reading yesterday, you have to deal with the outside world, but you have to have all these events going on inside you. And if you don't, there's no reason to give you sacraments. There's no reason to give you communion. You have nothing to offer. You go to communion to offer. If you have nothing to offer, why would you go? You married? Well, only if you have something to offer. You're going to bring morality into your family life? If not, we're not going to give you that sacrament. We're certainly not going to make you a priest unless you've started your own path of initiation. And to do so, you have to stop being so selfish. Well, who in today's age, the age of selfishness, if you said to somebody, stop all your selfishness, then they wouldn't exist. They're nothing but they're an automaton of selfish, basically survival, because it's a time of asocial activity. So what is it that you do if you do go inside? You find the beauty, because your body, your temple, is in fact a complete, exact 3D holographic replica of the cosmos. You don't need to look anywhere beside yourself. Go inside, it's everything that's outside. The only thing that's not inside you is who you are. People have to tell you who you are. You only know who you are by the love you give to people. And if you don't give any love, then you aren't anybody, and you may just fade away into nothing. But the point is, the more you connect to people, the more you give out love endlessly and don't expect it back, the bigger you become and the more beautiful you become, and the more your temple becomes a beautiful image of what you should become, the whole cosmos. So what is that? That's the art of living. And Rudolf Steiner said on his deathbed that if he had it to do all over again, he would turn the rudder 180 degrees in the direction of art. Because it's art. That's where the soul gets into goodness. That's where you can actually do good and not even know it. You can get children in a Waldorf school to do things by habit that are so good for them that you never told them it was good and they never fought you over it. It just became a habit. So what you do every day is what you become. So in a Waldorf school, we sang, we danced, we had joy, we laughed, we created, we drew, we went out and built, we did things in the garden, we did social activities, everything that is beautiful, that's what we did. And when people would come to observe in our classrooms, they'd leave crying and they'd say, I never had 1 second of that in my entire education. Not 1 second, and this is the whole day. They walk in, you greet them, you sing, everything we did from one transition to the next, there was a song. If it's time for painting, we start singing the painting song. If it's time to do form drawing, we start singing the form drawing song. That's the way life should be. Steiner said art is only art if you could apply it in every aspect of your life.
Exactly. A good friend of mine, I got a short little story that I'll share with you. It's so important. Friends of mine that I work with have a company they created called the Clean Earth Project. Now, I'm Republican, but that doesn't mean I don't want to clean the earth, and I don't believe that the earth is important. But contrary to that, their Clean Earth Project, they clean beaches all over, and they're growing and growing. They have paraphernalia, and they have these garbo grabbers that you can go clean the beaches up. And they were telling me a story about last year it happened. A lady came, it was a big cleanup here in Connecticut on the beach, and she dragged her husband, who was a big executive, and he didn't want to go. And my friend owns the company, and he went up to they were older guys, and he said, well, I don't want to be here, but I got to be with my wife. So they gave this big, busy executive a little thing to hold a bag and a garbo grabber. He would grab trash. He went out, and he came back 2 or 3 times all day with bags and bags of trash on the beach. And he said to my friend, who's the owner, he said, my God, my life has changed. I got more satisfaction from just walking the beach and picking up trash and doing some deed that basically needs to be done. Nobody wants to do it, but it's meaningless except for the environment. I mean, meaningless in our time of all the things that are important to me and all my CEOs of companies and lawyers and everything I'm doing up to here. And I got more satisfaction. Give me another bag. I want to go back out again because this is important. There's something about the mundane. There's something really, and as high as we go with information and knowledge, there's something about that everyday task like Mother Teresa and that simple helpfulness. And so many people don't need to know the things we speak about. Some do, others don't. So there's different levels of people wanting to know. And sometimes their deeds and their karma or just their development will require them to want to just do the acts and not necessarily know. And I want to make sure we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, just because you're not going to pick up Rudolf Steiner or in your religion, there's so many people that, according to their destiny or where they are in their destiny, can really snap out of the problems they're having and find that simple human action of helpfulness that St. Paul speaks about over and over. I go back to Paul because it's not goodness he speaks about. All things are lawful. In Romans, he speaks, but not all things are helpful. And so that helpfulness at the mundane, simple level, even of a child, as you spoke about in school, if they emptied the waste paper basket or clapped the erasers, it was so important to them and so valuable at the early ages that it's not going to be Hollywood and movie stars and Bill Gates and billionaire and Wall Street. The mysteries and the angelic world is really in the simple. So although we talk higher and to those who need it or want it, and we are, I'm going to walk outside and do some simple task later. And what comes through me when I look away from the spiritual knowledge and the seeking, and I just go into a mundane action, what comes through my being when the consciousness has moved aside and the emotions and the breathing and the will forces lead the way in action, that cannot be discounted. I don't want anyone listening thinking that they need to stay up in this high level energy and thought. There's so much more. 99% of everything's happening through the mundane.
So true. I love to clean. And when I was a teacher, when the children walked in the room, they saw it was clean. So when we left at the end of the day, it was clean. We weren't going to leave something dirty for someone else to clean. It was our mess. We cleaned it, and they saw me clean, and that's just the way it is. And that's what a teacher is. The teacher is teaching who they are. That's it. And so when you're trying to teach anything spiritual, all you can teach is who you are. And personally, I want to be a man slash angel. I don't want to be a man slash animal. I don't want to be a man slash transhuman. I don't want to be a man slash plant or a man slash uh, all kinds of man-made substances. I'd go into all of them, but they're so depressing to mention. And so what I want to be is I want to put my feet in the grass. I want to grow a garden. I want to see my beautiful children and basically be helpful. As the Dalai Lama, they say he's one of the greatest, smartest, wisest people. Well, he simply says, you don't need to work on love. That's too hard for some people. Just work on kindness. Just try to be kind and try to be simple. And that's what I always say. If it's got more than 4 ingredients in it, I don't want to eat it. And if it's got, if the book is too big, well, there's something wrong with the delivery. If you can't put it in a short book, then you probably are just carrying on a little bit too long. So remember, in all art, it is the human that is in it, not the degradation of the human, like in modern art, putting a toilet on the wall and saying that's, there's a name for that type of art, found art, and so on and so on. No, 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 no. There's beauty. And when there's beauty, here's the problem. Most people, unfortunately, we're just trying to point it out, that when they're in a gallery and they're looking at a beautiful piece of art, they're gawgawing at it. They're going into fascination. And so they're going into consciousness. They're trying to let it go in them without consciousness. And then he describes that there's actually beings that go in them at that point. You see, because beauty, if it isn't responded to, if it's just sit back and you say, give me all the beauty, Walt Disney, give me a ride that shows me all the beauty, give me a movie that shows me all the beauty, 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 I'll take it all in, it's not going to work. You have to make something beautiful, even if it's just taking an arrangement of rocks and putting them in a Julia set in the proper sequence, or creating a Mandelbrot set with some stones on the beach, or whatever you want to do that's beautiful, combing your child's hair, making good food, canning food, all these things. Those are profound things because why? You put the human at the heart. And in most of our age, because they have abnegated truth, beauty, and goodness, they take the human out of truth, out of beauty, and out of goodness, and they turn it into monsters, Frankenstein monsters. And so we don't want to go that way. We're across the threshold, as we talked about last conversation. We're going up. We're not going down. So we're going to do that through love, through kindness, through art, through all of the virtues. And when we look out and see all of the vices actually ruling this world, remember, as It is said in the Bible, you are born unto your father, the devil. This is the devil's world. Did Jesus said, my father's kingdom's not here, and neither was his. But he said he'd never leave us and he would transform this world. And that's what we're doing. But you transform it by working from the etheric into the physical, not by working from the physical into the etheric. The etheric is doing things over and over religiously. That
Yes.
is it.
And I think, Doug, what you do well, John does well, a lot of your supporters out there listen to you and all the work you've done for years, things I've tried to do and others I know in different realms. What we're seeking, and I know this, and it's been the heart of me since I was young, is that we're seeking in these confusing times to find the direction as free human beings. Although religions and sciences are all important and they rule our world everywhere, um, that we need to be able to understand. So many people I talked in the political realm are lost. I mean, they're in there trying to lead, become elected leaders, and they don't know anything about the primary focus of the human being. It's all try to help, supposedly, by spending money and borrowing from bankers, but it's not helpful. And so what's occurring in our time is people are confused. They're either going to run away from the environment, and the world's getting very, very dangerous. I spoke about this before. We all know it, becoming very dangerous intentionally. The more clear we are as to why we're going through these things, what is there, and we won't get these political solutions from politicians or from policies. They're going to come from the hierarchies, from goodness, from beauty, from seeking to be helpful, truly helpful, not government handouts helpful, truly helpful. And so we were here so people don't get discouraged. If you don't raise your intellect up to try to figure out what's happening and the highest level, it's just going to get bored and give up, apathy and stepping away. And then the world will come for you. The government will come. The wars will come. They'll visit your doors, as they've done so many times in World War I, World War II, and so we need to never give up the fact that spiritual science is the answer. I've said this before, and you've said it forever. It is the answer to finding out what is happening to us and why it's happening and who is pulling the strings and where God is in the whole mix.
Absolutely. Couldn't say it better myself. And so we just try in our simple way to show you the art of life that we have developed to say, okay, when I get sick, I take this or that substance or this or that substance. Or if I want to actually go into the spiritual world to experience an angel, this is how I do it. Or if I want to do some art that shows me the beauty of the world, this is how I do it. So through spiritual science and wildlife education and through eurythmy and through all the different aspects of it, you can also find eurythmy with Peter Dunov. You can find parts of eurythmy with Gurdjieff, a strange form of it. But the point is wisdom. It doesn't matter where you get it. It just so happens in spiritual science, and Steiner's view is one of the most condensed and most accurate and applicable. You can actually do things with this. But it's all out there, and that's what I love to do, is connect it all up with all the comparative religions and show that, yes, Steiner was right, but why? Because he was looking at truth. It wasn't because he was somebody special. He was just getting himself out of the way, looking at truth, and each and every one of us have that capacity to do that. And as we do, as Joe has pointed out today, it's going to make us look nicer in our next incarnation. Maybe next incarnation, I won't have such a long nose or something, or maybe I'll have better earlobes like you have. But you always have the great topic. So I cannot wait till our next conversation and to hear what it is that you come up with as the next insight to give, basically, as Tyler points out, your people. You're really into the people. I'm into a lot of knowledge, but you're into the people. And I think you understand where people are at today. And you've worked so long with you in your life to try to, as you say, be helpful to others. But what I'm doing, my path of initiation is very simple. I'm trying to be like my wife. I'm trying to be simply a very helpful person.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
It's my pleasure, Joe. Can't wait to have another chat with you soon.